Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Land Development Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Glick. And if this is your first time tuning in, our show is dedicated to having on individuals associated with the industry, hearing more about their origin story, and talking a little bit about the projects that they have going on. And today I'm excited to be joined by the Senior Vice President of Community Design at Rancho Mission Viejo, Kris Maher. Kris, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
So, where I like to start is digging into a little bit about your journey and your origin story and how you got into the industry. I know, your path might be a little bit different than others and everything. And so, kind of looking through how you got started, uh, it looks like it went down the path of, becoming an architect. And so, could you take us through the early days and how you got started into the industry?
Yeah, sure. It's actually I think it's a fun story. So, when I was in between my sophomore and junior year of high school, my family relocated from Connecticut to Michigan. So, I go into the new school year, obviously not knowing anyone, and they had a mechanical drafting class in the high school. I had no idea what that even meant, but I thought, well, I'll take that class. It sounds kind of cool. So the first day of class, I walk in, and the first thing I notice, I'm the only female in the class. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is kind of fun. But then on top of that, it turns out I had a real aptitude and absolute love of mechanical drafting, which is straight lines and triangles and scales and pencils. And I just loved it. And I was good at it. And so then I took the next class, which after mechanical drafting was architectural drafting. And that's when I knew I was going to be an architect. And so I went to school to become an architect. I got my license. And the first part of my career, I worked for small architectural firms, some startups, didn't get paid a lot of money. It was really kind of discouraging after all that college. And you think, oh, now I'm going to be an architect. And I think at the time, this was in the early 80s, and the minimum wage, I remember this so vividly. The minimum wage was $3.35. And as a college graduate, I was making $5 an hour as a draftsperson in an architectural firm. So I just thought, wow, it's going to be a long road. But I moved my way up into a different number of firms, got promotions, started making more money. And I ended up working for architectural firms that specialized in residential design. And specifically, it was production housing for home builders, for all the large home builders. And I enjoyed it. I still enjoyed the drafting, but I thought, there's probably more to this than just sitting behind a desk and drawing and being a project manager. And I reached out to one of our clients, and they were looking for someone, and I went over into the home building arena. And I worked for a couple different home builders for a number of years, moved around a bit. And at one point, the builder I was working for got bought out, and we all went to the new home builder, which at that time was Brookfield Homes. That was a new builder. And because they had the requirement with the acquisition was they had to take all of the employees from the previous builder onto their staff. And so they were bulging at the seams with all these extra people, and they slowly just started laying us all off. And I made it to the third layoff, and then I got laid off. First time I'd ever been laid off, which isn't an unusual story in this profession. It's a very volatile profession. So at the time I said, I just don't want to start right away with another builder. I just want to kind of hang back and see what comes my way. So I started my own little consulting practice, and I did that for a number of years. And after about 4 years, and I cobbled together enough work to make a living. Um, and after about the fourth year, a guy reached out to me named Don Stalin. I had known him from years before, and he talked to me about Rancho Mission Viejo and an opportunity there, coming in and overseeing their custom lot program and the design review of that. And I thought that sounded pretty interesting. And I knew and respected Don. I really didn't know much about Rancho Mission Viejo. So this was back in 2003. And so I went on board with Rancho Mission Viejo at that time as a full-time consultant running their design review. Um, and then I moved up in the organization. I even got to the point as a consultant where I had a team underneath me. I had actual employees reporting to me, and I was still a consultant. And I got into running all the amenity design. Then I got into running all the product design. And finally, they convinced me in 2014 to become an employee. So I've been with the organization for 20 years now,
Wow.
and it was the best decision I've ever made.
So in the when you were back doing your architect work, what
Mhm.
kept you in that? Like, you stayed there for, you stayed there doing that profession for a while. What kept you in it versus seeking something different earlier on?
What kept me in it was really still my love of drawing straight lines. And, I could literally sit there all day for 8 hours and draft, and to me, even though it was a working drawing of a house, the drawings that they build from, to me, it was artwork. I created this, there was something there at the end of the day that I could look at and be proud of, and that's really, I think, what kept me in it. Gradually as I moved up in the firm and I started having more responsibility and people reporting to me, and I ultimately was running the whole department, it really wasn't about architecture anymore. I was a manager at that point. I was
Yeah.
on the business side of things. And so I really, I was scheduling, dealing with personnel issues. So I was quite removed really from what it was I actually loved.
Okay, and I was going to ask you that because I was wondering as you started shifting in and working with builders, you were still in the architect role, but you kind of started to have people reporting to you, and then you essentially became leadership, and you were making sure that the architects on your team were, doing the things that they were supposed to do and everything.
That's right. And that's the irony of it. Today, I still work with a ton of architects, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So during those days and really in that profession, you mentioned, early on in school that, you were the only woman in the class, right? Doing this. And I don't know if that continued to be a theme as you went through, but I'm just curious, whether it was or it wasn't, what was your biggest influence to stay in that space and continue to work in that profession?
It was just my love of what I was doing, and
Okay.
even so as I moved up and, then I became a project manager, so now you're going out to construction jobs, and you're seeing the fruits of your labor, and I remember one time in particular, it was probably about 4:30 and on an afternoon, we were getting ready to open this model complex of one of my projects the next day, on a Saturday, and the job was basically shut down, there weren't too many guys still there working, and I'm standing there staring at these model homes, the feeling came over me of, wow, look what I've created. There's something here that I helped to create, something physical. And it was really a huge emotion for me. I still remember it so vividly.
Yeah. So when you talk about where you're at currently with Rancho Mission Viejo, with what you're doing there, is your role? It sounds like it's similar to what you were doing previously, but it's maybe something. It's a different focus on what you're doing. You're working with the architects, but your focus there is something different. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So, Rancho Mission Viejo, we build master plan communities. And so my current role is that I oversee all the planning, the front end planning, which you take a raw piece of land and you figure out what's going to go there, where are the roads going to go, where are the houses going to go, where's the retail, the commercial, the churches, the schools, how is this community going to lay out? And we do this at a very large scale. We call the various areas planning areas. The planning area we're working on right now is 2,200 acres, 7,000 homes. So it's massive.
Yeah.
We're about 2 years into it, and we've currently sold about 1,200 of the 7,000 homes. So, and then in my current role, I'm also in charge of builder land sales. So we don't actually build the homes. We sell the land to home builders, and then they come in and build the homes and sell them. That's their responsibility, but we do everything else. And so land sales, marketing is under my umbrella, the HOAs under my umbrella, everything we do with Department of Real Estate and all the CCNRs and all those kinds of docs. That's all my team does all of that.
Okay. And do you have you? It sounds like maybe you have several of these projects going on at any given time. So how do you manage that? How do you juggle the or keep things going?
Well, we do have a system of development, and you go phase by phase.
Got it.
So you move from phase one to phase two to phase three, but we're always planning ahead 2 to 3 years. because our construction timeframes for these various phases is significant. We don't have flatland, we're hillside development. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to grade a project. We move millions and millions of cubic yards of dirt all the time, and it's tremendously expensive and it takes time. So from the time we basically sell land to the home builders and we start the grading operation to create the pads for them to build the homes, because they won't move on site for another year until we complete the grading. It's probably another year past that before we even have homes for sale. So it's about a 2-year cycle once we start grading to when we grand open. And then the planning before that is another 12 months, 18 months of work even before that. So it takes a lot of forward planning. You have to, as best you can, predict where the market is going. Although we tend to stay pretty nimble and we can make decisions. Luckily, we can make whatever decisions we need to. We don't have any institutional debt. We can say, you know what, we're not going to sell this land right now. The economy isn't doing well. The builders aren't looking for land. They're all struggling. We're struggling. So we're very fortunate that we have that ability to stay nimble and make those types of decisions or to go faster. And now we're
Yeah.
in a great market and we're going faster all the time.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think the hillside development is something that I'm definitely not familiar with. Being here, I'm located in Iowa, so we're very flat, flat here. So that's yeah, that's definitely an interesting perspective of just what goes into those projects and some of the differences and challenges that you may face when you are having to move so much dirt just to get the sites ready to go for builders to come in. Looking at some of the projects that you've worked on in the past, I'm curious if you have one or, and it could even be a phase of a project that stands out in your mind as either one that is most memorable that you've worked on, or one that was most challenging that you could, talk a little bit about that project.
So I think one of the most memorable projects I've ever worked on, and I'm working on one right now, which I know will end up being this way as well. But I worked on a project called the Hilltop Club. It was an amenity. It's a clubhouse, and it's called the Hilltop because it sits at the very top of a hill. And part of where we're located in Southern California, we have a valley that comes up to our ranch land, and we get these ocean breezes. So we're starting to plan this club, and we would go up on the site and we would stand there and beautiful 360-degree views all the way around. So how do you plan for that when you're up on this hilltop thinking, where do I focus? Everywhere, every direction I look is beautiful. How do I plan this? Where do the buildings go? Where does the pool go? Where do you put the parking? And one thing we started thinking about, this is going to be a really expensive clubhouse and a beautiful pool, big pool. And we're standing up there and we're cold. And we're not cold because we got just jumped out of a swimming pool. We're cold because we're dressed in work clothes and standing there and the wind is hitting us. So that really became one of the biggest things to consider was how do we site this pool so people want to use it because it's cold up here. So what we ended up doing is we had to convince ourselves that when you're using the pool, it's an inward facing activity, meaning you're not going to be looking out at the view. You're going to be looking at who's in the pool. Do I want to get in the pool? Oh no, that person's in the pool that I don't really like. Okay. Oh, my friends are here. I'll go in the pool now. So that's really, your focus when you're at a pool. So what we ended up doing is we lowered the pool down below grade about 3 feet, and then we surrounded it on two sides by one of the buildings to keep the wind from getting it, and it worked really, really well. And I just always loved that story because there were so many challenges with the site and trying to figure it out. You think, oh, look at this cool pad up here with all these views, but then you start to really think about what all the challenges are once you get up there. So that was a really fun project. And we have an open air gym, so we built a fitness room where one whole side is open. So when you're running on the treadmill or working out on the elliptical, you're looking out over the pool and then you can look to the left and see the view. So it's really pretty neat. And that fitness room, because we do every door has an electronic strike. You have to get in with your access pad, and we monitor, what the residents use. We check the frequency of what's getting used, and that fitness room is the most used amenity out of anything we've ever built. They love it.
That's awesome. And
Like
so
being at the resort.
yeah, well, I was gonna say, so this is a clubhouse that's a part of the community. So community members they get access to the clubhouse. is it the entire community that gets access, or do they get access? Are there multiple clubhouses that they get access to, and this is just one of them, or how is that set up inside this community?
Um, we so we're a very large community, and so we have multiple multiple amenities all over the place, and
Yeah.
we build in separate villages. Our villages aren't contiguous. I mentioned the biggest one that we're working on right now, Planning Area 3. And so then we completed the village of Sendero, which has amenities. The village of Ascencia. Now we're in the village of Rienda, and we do build more and more facilities as we move across the community. And the residents can move from village to village and use any of the amenities.
Gotcha. And I assume based on the data that you're able to gather from people who are using different things, it kind of helps you decide as you continue to add more homes and more people to the community when it's time to add another particular amenity, whether it's a fitness center or things of that nature.
Well, we have that all programmed in. So, for
Okay.
instance, for planning area 3 for the 2,200 acres, we already know exactly how many pools we're building, how many clubhouses, and we have to do that because the most important thing that we consider is what are the HOA dues going to be?
I
And so,
see.
as you build more and more of these facilities, you have to understand what that's going to mean for your residents and for your future homeowners. Because at some point, if the dues get higher and higher and more, it starts to affect people wanting to live in your community. So we really we program out years ahead, so we know as we move forward 10 years from now, the HOA dues should be this.
Okay. And do you ever run into situations where the user behavior is maybe different than what you were thinking when you went into a project, and then therefore you have to make some adjustments based on that user behavior? They're not using this, or they're all using this, and that type of thing?
That's a great question. And we spend a lot of time thinking about who's going to buy here. And even generationally, we look at, so I can give you a couple examples. Right now, we're planning a big clubhouse for one of our 55 plus neighborhoods. And we've done a number of those facilities already, but now the Gen Xers are in their late 50s. I think the leading Gen Xers are 57 years old. So those are actually the people who are going to be using this clubhouse, not so much the boomers. So we knew how the boomers were going to perform. We knew what they wanted. We knew what they liked in a clubhouse, but the Gen Xers, are they going to look for the same? Are they wanting the same? And so we actually did some focus groups at the end of last year. We pulled young boomers in and we pulled older Gen Xers in, and we asked them a series of questions. What kind of fitness are you looking for? What kind of, you know, uh, food experiences? And so we have to inform ourselves because you just can't guess. These things are so expensive. And likely, we also did the same thing with millennials about 5 years ago, trying to figure out what they were looking for, not only in housing, but in amenities as well. And we thought we were so cool at one point. We had this little building in a clubhouse facility. It was a standalone building where they could brew their own beer. And we did some focus groups, and they were like, "Brew our own beer? We want to drink it. We don't want to brew it." So we took that idea off the table.
Oh,
So
that's
no,
funny.
we really have to think about it. And as I mentioned before, we monitor the swipes data. We get a report that shows us from the electronic swipes what's getting used, and even more importantly, what isn't getting used.
Yeah, no, I love that research and that the approach to doing that. My background's in technology, and so that it's the same thing that we do on the technology side, right? You're doing the user research to understand the people who are going to be using. In our case, it might be, the product or whatever, and then in your case, the product is the community and the
Yeah,
amenities that are available there. So no, I really love that approach. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
So what as you look ahead to the rest of this year and look into, the rest of 2024 and into 2025, what do you have on the horizon for your projects and everything that you're working on?
So right now we are going to be selling land again at the end of June. Have our builders coming in. We call it our Builder Opportunity Program. We have 3 market rate neighborhoods that we're going to sell and 4 55 plus neighborhoods. So that's immediately on the horizon. And then we're working on the clubhouse I mentioned for the 55 plus buyer. And then we're projecting out. After we finish, phase 5, we'll sell that in June. Then we move to phase 6, so we're starting to plan that. We always have stuff going on here. It's very 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 busy, very dynamic.
Yeah.
Never a dull moment. I love it.
Well, it sounds like that's the case.
Yeah.
One thing that we like to finish up the episodes with is something where we do a lightning round. And so I kind of put together 5 questions that we'll just do quick answers on, 60 seconds or less. I still am not innovative enough to have a timer up on the screen to be able to show you what 60 seconds is. So we'll do the best we can here with these. No, there's no. It's really just meant to get your perspective on a few things related to your career and the projects and stuff that you're working with. So for the first one, what's one design feature that you've implemented at Rancho Mission Viejo that you believe should be the standard in future community developments?
Bars. So we've
Okay.
built a number of bars. We actually have liquor licenses, and it's a great way to bring people together. I know that sounds funny, but it really is. We have food trucks come in. We Our development is sort of at the end of the road, so to speak. So for us to get retail and restaurants, it takes a while. We have to get critical mass, meaning rooftops. So I think the bars have been one of the things. We've built 3 of them so far, and it's really been one of the things that brings the community together and lets neighbors meet neighbors. And it's really been a great, great thing. They don't always make a lot of money, but it's worth it in the long run, the investment that we made.
Nice. I wouldn't have thought of that one. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Second one here. What's the best piece of advice you've received in your career?
Gosh.
Yeah, that's maybe a gotcha one there. That's
You
a
know,
tricky
my
one.
my predecessor, he made me a diagram once, and I still have it. It's sitting over there on the other side of my office, and it's a stick figure, sort of standing in a doorway and sort of straddling it. And he wrote on there, creativity is being able to straddle the known and the unknown. And I love that because you have to keep one foot in the known, but you have to keep pushing yourself to what's the unknown? What am I not thinking about? What is so obvious, but I'm not seeing it? And so I think that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got.
Yeah, like it. All right. How do you incorporate? Well, we already talked about this one actually. I was going to say, how do you incorporate community feedback into the design and development process? And we've already gone through all of that. So you obviously have a process that you follow there.
Well, is one other thing we do that's actually pretty interesting. We do resident surveys, and we do those biannually. And we're at a point now where this community is about 10 years old, and some of our first residents, the bloom is off the rose a little bit. We used to just get these glowing reports back from these surveys, but now they're getting a little bit more jaded, a little bit more vocal. But that's a tremendous tool to really understand what you're doing right, but more importantly, what you're doing wrong and what can we improve on. So that's a great piece of feedback.
Yeah, I like that. And I think, it's one of the things that we've struggled with in Iowa. We have this whole Iowa nice saying, right? Where you want constructive feedback from people. You want the truth. You want people to just let you have it. And sometimes they won't. They're just
Yeah.
like they just tell you all the positive things because it's more comfortable to do that, honestly. And so yeah, sometimes it's hard to get people to tell you the truth versus what they think you want to hear. Okay, number 4 here. What's the biggest challenge facing land development today, especially in California where you're located? And how are you addressing that at Rancho
Oh,
Mission Viejo?
yeah, it's challenging. I show my age when I say, "Oh, it used to be so easy," but really, I'm sure you hear about the politics here in California and I, the constant assault on home building and the laws they passed with the unintended consequences that just keep rising, that keep raising how much it costs to build a home. And so what the only thing that means is the price of the home goes up to the people who need homes. And so that's frustrating. We're also dealing with the wildfire issue. We are a ranch. We have open ranch land all around our communities, and so working with that issue and the insurance, that's also very challenging right now.
Yeah, I think the politics of it is something that we're seeing, we're seeing everywhere. And like I'm talking to developers kind of all over the place, and it seems to be a common thing. I think there are those unintended consequences of,
Yeah,
I think in most cases they're trying to do good, but then at the end of the day, it's like they're not understanding how it's impacting the business and the end consumer who's trying to, trying to find a home for themselves to live. So yeah, not surprising that that's something also you're also dealing with out there.
yeah.
Okay, last one here. How has being an architect had an impact on your career path? And I think specifically, how do you think being an architect helps you maybe in your current role, having that knowledge?
You know, I think and when I was in architecture, there's two sides of architecture. There's the design side, the creative side, and then there's the production side, the working drawings. How do you build something? And I was always on the production side. And how that has served me really well in my career now is I'm very practical. I can see how things should happen, and I can take really creative architects to bring me my ideas, and then we can kind of meet in the middle and end up with the best possible solution. So I really think that that's how architecture has helped me.
Nice. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention about Rancho Mission Viejo, or anything that you have going on there before I'll ask you how people can get in touch with you here in a second? But anything else you want to add about the organization?
Yeah, if anyone's interested, you should take a look at our website, ranchomissionviejo.com. It's an absolutely gorgeous website, and it gives you a really good sense of our community and what we're all about.
Awesome. And then for people who may want to get in touch with you, or, follow you, or any of the content or anything you have out there, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Probably through the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, with that said, I think that'll be a good spot to wrap up. Thanks again for joining, and for all of you listening in. If you're not yet subscribed to the show, please take the time to do so. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks.